Welcome back, Clan Mackay, to the Clan Mackay Society YouTube channel. Today we have the benefit of hearing from Chris Mackay, my co-Shenehee, as he now finds himself in South Scotland in Galloway. A lot of people have always been commenting on the origins of the Clan Mackay and how they became the clan they are today. And I think this is a perfect video for those people to watch because Chris goes into the origin story of the Mackay side of the Mackays, also known as the McGhie, and gives a bit of the backstory of what their coat of arms looks like and why that's the case. So let's just hand it off to Chris and let's hear what he has to say.
Hunter, Mackay of Carrickbraith here, coming to you now from Scotland, and in the far south of Scotland in Galloway. And in this video I had hoped to explore the southern Mackay connection. I'm here in the churchyard of the Balmaghie Kirk, which is behind me here, which was built at the end of the 18th century, but local historians talk about a church of some sort being here since the 11th century. So why Balmaghie? What is the connection with the Mackays? Well, Balmaghie is an anglicization of the Gaelic for town of the Mackays, Balmaghie. And this is where we get into a sort of a linguistic split in this region of Scotland, where the pronunciation of the Gaelic Mackay here takes a more of an E sound. And so instead of Mackay, we get McGhie, McKee, or Mackay. It's the same Gaelic name, but the pronunciation changes. That pronunciation isn't exclusively restricted to the south, but it's most commonly heard here in the south. So Balmaghie, town of the Mackays, and in and around Galloway, historically there have been a lot of McKees, McGhies, Mackays, and I hope to be able to show you some of the sites that they're associated with down here in the south. Hunter, in addition to the Balmaghie Mackays or McGhies, there's another major Mackay family here down in the south in Galloway, what became the McKies of Larg, or the McKies of Larg. There's a bit of a fun story or legend about excuse me, that family. I'm here at a place called Craigin-Cally, which means in Gaelic the rock or the crag of the old woman, which you can see here. In fact, there's still a house just up the road here that's known as Craigin-Cally House. At the time of King Robert the Bruce, when he was here in the south, basically as a fugitive from the English and Scots who were hunting him, he was at that time without an army, and he came through this very area and came across Craigin-Cally, where there was the old woman of the crag. She was a widow who had 3 sons by 3 different fathers: Murdoch, McClurg, and Mackay, or Mackay, or Mackay. And in fact, some of the events of this legend were loosely portrayed in the 2019 film Robert the Bruce. The Bruce comes here and refuges with the widow and her 3 sons. And the 3 sons offer their service to be basically the beginning of a new army for Robert the Bruce. So he says to these boys, well, can you fight? What can you do? And they say, aye, we can fight. We can use our bows and arrows. So the Bruce, the king, says, well, show me, prove to me of your skill. So the 3 boys go out. And the first, McClurg, takes aim and shoots with his arrow. There's a bit of discrepancy in the legend as how successful he is. Some versions of the legend say he misses a nearby raven. Another says he catches the raven on a tail feather. The second boy, Murdoch, shoots at another raven as it's on the wing in the air, hits and kills that raven. And it's the third son, Mackay or McKee, who shoots 2 ravens sitting on a branch and spears them both with the 1 arrow. So the king is suitably impressed, and he says, aye, you 3 can become my first 3 new men to re-raise my army to fight for the liberty of Scotland. And so that's what they do. The widow gives their blessing for them to go off and fight with the Bruce, and they do that first at a battle that's not far from here. So after the 3 boys, Hunter, were done fighting for King Robert, he had asked their mother, the old widow, if there is anything he could give her in compensation for the service that her boys had rendered him. And she said, yes, you could grant me some land. And he did that. He granted her land in the area in which her home was. And that land was inherited by her boys eventually. And Murdoch received Cumlodden, which is not far from where I am now. Her son McClurg received an area, Currichtree, which is also not far from where I am now. And her third son, Mackay, received Larg, which is the name of a hill just behind me here. And he had built, and his descendants lived in, a castle or a tower known as the Tower of Larg, which is this very area here. It's now all but a ruin. You can see some of the old stones here, and there's maybe some parts of the walls overgrown by grass and shrubs that stand maybe 2 meters or so tall. So this is the headquarters, as it were, of the Mackies of Larg, which is the senior branch of those Mackies or Mackays in the Galloway and in deep south in the lowlands here. This was their tower, sort of the Castle Mackay in the south. And this is all that remains of it today. Hunter, one of the boons that the Bruce granted the 3 sons who had served him so loyally was the idea that they could bear heraldic devices or arms. So eventually what was decided upon is, because of this feat of arms with the ravens, that they would bear ravens on their shields. You'll remember that McClurg either only sort of caught one in the tail feathers or missed one, but despite that, all 3 brothers, McClurg, Murdoch, and Mackay, bore and bear to this day the symbol of the 2 ravens pierced by the single arrow, which is the feat that Mackay achieved. However, all 3 brothers have laid claim to that feat, at least graphically, on their coats of arms. And here in the churchyard of Minnigaff, right next door to in fact, the old medieval kirk of Minnigaff, we have a headstone of one of the McClurg family, who bears on it that coat of arms that you can see here with the 2 ravens and the arrow piercing both through the neck, as well on top of the helmet, a 3rd raven. Now, the Mackay family bore this same device, but above the ravens was a lion. The Book of Mackay suggests that this lion was in order to draw a connection with the other Mackies or McGhies in Balmaghie, because their arms bear 3 lions' faces, or leopards as they are known heraldically. I have my own theory as to why that lion appears in the Mackay arms, but that's a little more convoluted, so we'll save that perhaps for an article. But here we are again in Mackay lands in the south, Mackay lands in the south, and we see their distinctive device of the ravens pierced by the single arrow. All right, here we are, Hunter, in Edinburgh, and happily there's a great example of the Mackay of Larg's arms here in a banner form. As I described, this commemorates that feat of arms of that Mackay down in Galloway who was granted the lands of Larg. Commemorates his feat of arms by killing the 2 ravens with 1 arrow. And the lion in the top My theory is that that signifies the royal witness of Robert the Bruce there. It's a topic of longer discussion for another time, but this is a great, happy example of what the arms of the Mackay of Larg looks like, one of the septs of the Clan Mackay.